If you guys were wondering why there are no shop videos, you can take a look and see how much of a mess everything is. I moved everything out of the back of the garage and I've kind of shifted it to the front, but I got to get it all organized some kind of way. Doesn't look like everything's gonna fit, but you can see the mess. Here's the Woodpecker's T-square and the Polini pocket rule. It's in here, but basically I got to figure out how I'm gonna organize all of this stuff. So yeah, that's where we're at. The Festool wall is right here, as you can see, and I'm not even gonna bother to show the other side. There's a bunch of tubs and stuff over there that I had to bring out into the shop, and I have to figure out how to get all this stuff organized. Do not know how I'm going to do that, but this is why there's no shop videos right now. Hello guys, welcome to Daddy Share Space and welcome to my channel. So I wasn't going to do a video today, but after praying about it and thinking about it, I decided to just go ahead and turn on the camera and see what happens. As a man, I make a lot of plans for myself and for my family, and things most of the time do not turn out the way that I would have hoped. And I always find myself having to accept the way things are, or accept my lot in life, if you will. So I've already shared that the air conditioner went out over the weekend. I'm still waiting on the guy to show up to take care of that. I'm in the middle of shifting a bunch of stuff around in the garage, and that is going slower than I would have hoped. So I kind of feel like I'm in the middle of a limbo stage right now, because I'm doing this YouTube channel and my goal is to make daily content, but sometimes things don't work out exactly how you want them to. It seems simple to me. Go to work, come home, go in the garage, do something. But life's just not that simple. Sometimes things happen, things occur behind the scenes that prevent you from being able to do some of the simplest tasks. And oftentimes I wonder why things turn out like that. But then being, a Christian and understanding that all things work together for the good of those that love the Lord and are called to his purpose, you understand that everything that happens in your life is to make you stronger, to guide you along a path. And some days it's easier to accept than others. There are many a times when I have to get into my word and really try to find something to get me over the hump for the next day. Because I don't know about you, but for myself personally, when I back up and I look at life, it can be quite monotonous. It's like getting up, doing the same thing every single day. Get up, shower, eat breakfast if you do, go to work, come home, and then it's like rinse and repeat every day. And when you live a life like I do, where you don't do a lot of the things that other people do, you don't go out, you don't go to restaurants, you don't party, you don't drink, life can be very, very monotonous at times. And so you try to do the little things that you can do, whether it be watch a TV show, play a video game, take up woodworking, and try to find joy in your work. All of these are just different ways to try to pass time until the inevitable, which is the day that we all eventually die. Some days you get up, or at least some days I get up, and I'm looking at the whole situation and I'm wondering, like, what is the point of all this? When I look at, there's so many elements, when I look at the fact that there are so many elements of life that we have no control over, You don't, like, I didn't choose to be a person to have to wear glasses. I didn't choose my height. I didn't choose, I didn't choose my race. I didn't choose the family that I was born into. There's so many elements in life that you don't choose, and you just pick up and you're running on this treadmill that is called life, typically going in a direction that has been prefabricated for you by, let's just say, the Joneses, or, society. The world tries to tell you this is the path you should take, this is where you should go, this is the type of person you should be. And in the process of doing that, maybe you're the type of person that tries to follow those pathways and tries to check all the boxes. Or maybe you're a trailblazer and you just try to go your own route. Regardless of how you live, it's like some people do what they want to do when they want to do it, and yet they get through every challenge. They just, it appears like they just coast through life. I don't know if you feel like that, or if you feel like you know people like that. And then there's some of us that every time you turn around, you're running into some kind of a brick wall, some kind of a challenge. And it's so funny because I remember when I was a younger person making poor decisions and taking chances that I didn't need to take. And when I look back, whenever something bad happened to me, I see the cause and the effect. I see, like, okay, I did this bad thing and this punishment came upon me. But then as I got older, I started to just basically prune my life based upon what I understood the Bible to say. And so I stopped doing this, I stopped doing that, I stopped doing the other thing. And what started to occur was pretty shocking to me. And what I learned is that you don't even have to go outside your house. You don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to do anything for problems to come right up into your face, for problems to just knock on your door and come into your life. It can come into your life via health problems. It could come into your life via neighbors, via, anybody that you come in contact with, life circumstances and situations. And we oftentimes, well, not often, we always have to figure out a way to navigate these problems and these challenges. One of the things that you guys wouldn't know about me, but I'll share it today. Probably almost a decade now ago, I went to the dentist, and the dentist told me that I needed to have my wisdom teeth removed. And so they referred me to the person that does that. And then I guess the oral surgeon. And it was this lady. And she told me, I'm not going to do it unless, I give you sedation. So I trusted. This person was referred to me by a coworker at the time. And I go and I have the procedure. And when I woke up, I was, I was in a lot of pain and discomfort. And I had a lot of numbing sensation. And mind you, this was like about 10 years ago or so. And after a while, I started to notice that the numbing did not go away. And, of course, I had to go back to the dentist or the surgeon and talk to them. And, for the course of a year, they did tests. And basically, from this portion right here of my mouth all the way back here is basically permanently like numb, where I can't feel anything going back on my lip and anything in there. And I noticed that, after that surgery, not only do I not have the feeling, but there are times when, my bottom lip, it's just like this, I don't know, it's a weird sensation, almost like a constant numbing sensation. It gets worse at times, and sometimes it gets better. And you could tell when I'm tired because when I'm tired, I start to, it's very difficult for me to control my bottom lip to enunciate certain words when I get tired. And even like right now, for whatever reason, it's really tight and tense. And so I'm having to be very specific when I try to articulate certain words. If I get too lazy and I just start talking too fast, I'll just start almost like slurring words and stuff like that, because I don't have the same kind of control. So obviously when you talk, you know, your voice and the way you talk, your lips are involved in that, along with your tongue and so on and so forth, or your vocal cords. And so for me, a lot of times I find myself trying to think about how my mouth needs to move in order for me to articulate a certain word. And when I'm thinking about that, it's like a bifurcation from just being able to speak freely. And so like I find a lot of times that I'll be talking, and because I'm so focused on how to enunciate a word and how to make sure that my bottom lip is engaged in what I'm trying to say, that I'll lose my train of thought of even what I'm trying to say. And so it's been a challenge. It's just one of those things that I've had to live with for the past 10 years. And it's never gone away. And, you know, that's just one of the things. That's an internal thing that I have had to suffer. And it wasn't something that I went out and I did someone wrong. That's just how it worked out for me. And so you can have things like this, and then, you know, as an individual person, you just start to fight. You know, you just push past it. And even though, you know, earlier on, I was a bit, you know, maybe a little bit more self-conscious about it. But then, you know, thank goodness I'm already married. I already have kids, so on and so forth. So I'm not out there in the dating scene trying to, you know, manage this deficit and trying to put my best foot forward. The other thing that I noticed that it does is, like, when I get really tired, I can start to spit, right, when I'm talking, because this portion down here is just not operating properly. And yeah, it's just a challenge, right? And, you know, I share stuff like that to say that, like, you know, nobody's life is perfect. We all deal with our own different individual challenges. And I think about how, you know, when I was a younger man, and I was already a registered nurse, I actually considered at one point in time going back to school to learn medicine, to become a doctor. But at that time, I had very little experience with other doctors. The only doctors that I knew were the medicine ICU doctors, and they were on the job quite a bit. I work with residents and also attendings. And the way that I am, I'm a very, I guess, passionate person, but I'm also very extreme. And I felt like at that time that later in life I wanted to have a wife, I wanted to have kids. And I felt like if I would have pursued medicine the way that I would have wanted to pursue medicine, it would not have given me the opportunity to have a wife and kids the way that I wanted to have them. Because I could get really intense about anything I do. I mean, you should see that as evidenced by, you know, tool collections and so on and so forth. I've gone through all these different, you know, phases and chapters in my life where I've been very, very intense about different things, you know, trying to get to the very depth or the core of something. Oftentimes, because I'm always trying to get to the core or get really deep with stuff, I don't say that to say like, oh, I'm so intelligent or so smart. That's not really what I mean. It's just a natural curiosity. I like to understand things, and not to the point of perfection, though I would consider myself in a lot of ways psychologically like a perfectionist who doesn't perfect things. And you see, I remember when I was about 17, that was when I first started reading my Bible. And as I mentioned before, I've read it cover to cover multiple times. And what I realized is when I used to go to church, regularly, I couldn't have conversations with the people in the church because 99.9 of them, or 99.9% of them, they didn't even know what was in the Bible. And it created a dissatisfaction in me because I wanted to learn more. I was hungry and thirsty to know more and to grow more in that way because I felt like that was the path for me to become the best person, the best version of myself. And it got to the point to where I just would see things in people, and I would say things, I would ask questions that people didn't necessarily appreciate. And so, at different, church locations, it kind of led to us like no longer going to that church just for different reasons because, I would ask, certain questions about different things, why things were done a certain way. Why was it different? Why am I reading something different in the Bible than what I'm seeing us do, like in the church? And people don't like their views questioned like that. People don't, like, I guess I struggle with the fact that, let's say if it came to tithes and offerings, we can go by the letter of the law of the Bible on that. But then anything that seemed to be inconvenient to the like church bylaws, that just gets glossed over. And then all of a sudden we're not following that portion of scripture. So that level of inconsistency, made me have to pull back from regular conventional church as most people know it, because I was determined to meet people that were really into, the word and really wanted to grow in that way. And the thing is, it's funny because I'm like that with everything. When I was into sports, I was very intense. I wanted to know all the different stats. I wanted to sit down and have dialogue with people about these things. And I never met anybody that had that same passion about really anything. And so I would find myself growing extremely bored when I would talk to people, because they often talk about things in a very superficial way. And I actually started reading this book. It may have been called The Art of Conversation or just Conversation. And at the very beginning of the book, I didn't even finish it because as I was reading it, it was talking about how, conversation being different from, like conversation that most people have, the conversation that I hear every day. And it was talking about the elements of conversation. And essentially, like, it's like almost like a dance where people just, offer up different ideas, different concepts. You talk about the weather, talk about a bunch of stuff that's basically completely meaningless to me. And people will talk about these things, but they're also not being truthful. They're not being honest. They're not being transparent. It's just conversation for conversation's sake. And I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing. But what I have found in conversation is that when you listen closely to people, when you really pay attention to people, you can see this place where people kind of turn off. And what I mean by that is, like, people will be talking superficially and non-engaged, if you will, or in a very shallow realm. But then if you pay attention, you'll find yourself doing something that person wants you to do, or giving that person something, because in this layered, veiled, like superficial surface conversation, they're actually manipulating you, right? They're manipulating you to get something out of you. And I don't know, I'm very hypersensitive to that. And so I would often just call people on it. I would just say the situation, and then you get labeled as rude. You get labeled as, like off-putting, because you realize that you see the game. You see when someone comes up and is talking nice to you, and 2 seconds later, they're asking you for something. And you start to do this correlation, because if you flip the scenario around, and I've even tested this theory on many of occasions, you may be talking friendly to someone, and then you turn around and use the same technique that they used on you, and it's a straight up no. But people, I just noticed this in interactions, not just with me, but just when I watch other people interact one with another, and I would see people like just deceive each other and just talk all kinds of, strange ways to one another. None of the conversation has any meaning, but yet even these people, you can see two people that really don't even like each other, and superficially they act like they do, right? And they may even come and talk to you about this other person in a very negative way. But then for some reason, that person, let's say person A and person B, they can actually combine together and they unify against you. You know what I'm saying? Maybe because you're a person that, calls things as they are. And I don't know, I just find that a very fascinating element to humanity, because I don't always know what to do with that. Like I personally, I prefer a lot of alone time. I prefer, which is odd, because being a registered nurse, I like taking care of my patients. I really enjoy my interaction with my patients, but I think I enjoy that relationship because when people come to the hospital, they have a need. And as a registered nurse, we help them with that need in whatever capacity that we work in. Whereas when you interact with people that don't have a need, then it's a choice of interaction, right? And when you have a choice of interaction, you may find that people, they may not like you at all, but that will not stop them from trying to use you or trying to steal resources from you or trying to manipulate you for their own benefit. And that is something, when I sense that in people, I try my best with all possibility to keep my distance from people like that. And I think that's one of the reasons why as well I do take to this, whether it be the DIY and the woodworking and stuff like that, because in those environments, you don't need to interact with someone else, right? I mean, obviously, if you need to learn a new skill or a new technique, you can watch a video and it's a one-sided affair. You don't have to worry about someone, putting their hand out and trying to manipulate you or trying to do, something that you don't want them to do. It's, you take what you want and you give what you want, right? And there's a book that I read. It's called Safe People. It's I can't remember the author. I think the last name is Townsend or something like that. And in the book Safe People, it talked about relationships from almost like a banking concept. And in a banking concept, it's kind of like when you interact with people, it doesn't matter if it's your wife, your husband, your friend, your children. It's like you can put into that bank account positive things, positive actions, positive affirmations, all of these things. And that puts credit into that relationship. But on the flip side, you can interact with people that are constantly taking debits. And constantly taking debits is like a person that's always asking you for money, a person that's always trying to manipulate you to get them to get you to do something for them that they don't want to do for themselves. Those are negative. In my opinion, those are debits. Those are negative interactions. And so when I personally interact with people, I always want to try to be a positive and give. But when I recognize that someone is simply just a taker and they're not a person that likes to reciprocate, that's when I will back off And, you know, just like when you're cooking food, like if you say you put a certain amount of salt, a certain amount of pepper, it tastes a certain way. When you change that combination of ingredients, whether the seasoning, the salt and the pepper, you change the taste of the food. Likewise, if you start a relationship, a friendship, an interaction with someone on one level, and let's say you're giving that relationship 100% of yourself, you know, you're focused, you're engaged, you're giving positive, you know, you're putting positivity into the relationship, and then you find out, or the interaction, let's just call it an interaction, and then you find out just through evaluation that the other person is doing nothing but withdrawals. Nothing but withdrawals. They never put input, they just withdraw. And you know, as I've mentioned many a times, you know, or as I've mentioned recently, like here in California, you meet more people that take withdrawals. They don't put anything positive in. All they do is take withdrawals, and they seem to have been raised like that. They've been raised to do nothing but try to seek people out to advance whatever it is their desires are in life. And they never think about the cost. They never think about who they harm or who they disrespect. And, you know, as I, you know, will say continually, you know good or right and wrong by based upon, if you don't want it to happen to you, then you know it's the wrong thing to do. And so when you get around people that are always doing negative things, or always subtracting from a relationship or subtracting from an interaction, and never investing in an interaction, then, you know, I personally consider these people to be very unsafe people, and not very useful to your future. Because at the end of the day, you know, if you always have someone taking, and I know, you know, in scripture, it talks about, you know, love your neighbors yourself, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. But it also says that, you know, we should bear one another's burdens, but each one is to carry their own load. And that's what I'm talking about. You can meet people that have a mindset, a mindset of entitlement, that feel like they don't have to carry their own load. They don't have to do anything for themselves, and that they can essentially delegate away all of the responsibilities of their life that they don't want to deal with. Like, that's like having like that buddy or that friend that never has their money to pay their rent, and they just come up to you, hey man, can I borrow some money? Or, you know, scenarios like that. And it's like, you know, having people like that in your life that are always burdening you down, always putting a responsibility on your back, and never reciprocating in any way, it's challenging to deal with people like that. And I try my best to minimize contact with people like this, because unfortunately they don't know any better, and they can't do any better. That's their personality. That's who they are as a person from their core. And you can't change a person like that. You can't shame a person like that into doing the right thing. That's just who they are. And you have to accept them for who they are. And you just have to, I look at it like this, you know, I'll use kind of like healthcare as an example. When we take care of patients that have, you know, some kind of a communicable disease, as a registered nurse, we put on protective equipment. We call it PPE, personal protective equipment. And when you deal with let's call them a taker, you have to interact with them with personal protective equipment on at all times. And if you don't, then you will suffer, you know, great harm from dealing with people like this. You will find out that you will not reach goals and milestones in your life when you have people like this around you, simply because everything that you work hard to get, they will take it. And they feel entitled, and they will try to manipulate you and make you feel bad about not giving away everything that you have. And even though, like I said, in scripture, it says to love your neighbors yourself, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, good Samaritan, and so on. The Bible also says bad company corrupts good character, right? And so you don't want to put yourself in a bad environment. You can't do anything about when God puts you in a bad situation. but you can choose to not put yourself in a bad situation. You could choose to scan your landscape, scan your environment, and choose not to interact with people that don't bring positivity into your life, that only come to try to take whatever resources that you have, and that don't want to reciprocate anything. Because I'll be honest, I wish it was a situation that, like, if you gave away everything would come back to you. But unfortunately, that's just not the case. That's not been my experience. You know, you can get to the point to where you can give so much of yourself that you actually start to suffer harm. You actually start to, your quality of life starts to go down. And so you have to be mindful of, am I doing what God would have me to do, or am I being a fool? And that takes prayer and obviously meditation to try to determine that for yourself. But for myself, I really apply that, bad company corrupts good character, or the scripture that talks about how one who is slack in their work is kin to one who destroys. And so if I know someone that doesn't really like to work hard, then I know that everything has a cost. If you consider, like, say you wanted to go to a movie theater and it costs $10 to get in. Well, if you are willing to work hard to get that $10 to go to the movie theater, right? And then you go with someone who is not willing to work that hard to get their $10 to go to the movie theater, then in order for you to go to the movie theater with that person, you have to pay their way. And if you continually build relationships with people where you're always paying their way and they never reciprocate, then that becomes the standard. And that's the only level of respect that person is going to have for you, is for you to be a provider for them. We're not talking about children here. We're talking about adults. And unfortunately, as I mentioned earlier, when you change the chemistry of a relationship, it changes the taste, it changes the relationship. And thus forth, this is something that I found too many times. I've made the mistake of overinvesting in people when I first meet them. And then when I realize that they may not be the nice person that I thought they were, or when I realize that they're not really a reciprocator, and I start to pull back, there's a tearing of the relationship. And the other person becomes angry at you. They become mad at you. They see you as the problem. And they are not wrong. They are not wrong. And the reason why they're not wrong is because if you come into the relationship or the situation or the interaction and you choose out of your own free will, out of the kindness of your heart, to pay for someone's access to the movie every time you go to the movie, that other person within their mind can create a mindset where they feel like, well, this is how you were, and this is what I expect you to be going forward. Now, that's the danger of interacting with people and going back to the whole safe people concept. It makes it, you'd have a whole lot less friends if you're wise enough to be able to put certain tests out from the very beginning. And understand that, like, say, if you using the analogy of taking someone to the movies, if you take them to the movies the first time and they never offer to take you to the movies the second time, you should probably take note of that and recognize that this person may be a taker, And if they're a taker, then you have to ask yourself, are you going to be okay with giving like that for the rest of your life? Because they're not going to go away and they're not going to stop asking. They're not going to stop trying to get from you. They're not going to stop trying to take free resources from you. That's never going to stop. So then if you and yourself don't feel like you have the energy or the resources to continually feed that relationship, then you already know that relationship is over before it's over. Because if you know that your fatigue level and your patience is going to give out, and you're going to stop doing the thing that you was doing in the beginning, the relationship has nowhere to go but downhill. Because it's a situation like where if a person doesn't respect you and they've been allowed to disrespect you, they will never have respect for you. That's just a personal lesson that I've learned, and I'm just sharing it with you today. Anyways, a different kind of video, guys. Thank you for taking time to watch the video. I'll see you in my next one.